Good evening and welcome. I'm Janet Ott, representing the League of Women Voters of Bellingham and Whatcom County, and I'm your moderator for this evening's forum. Founded in 1920, the League is a nonpartisan organization with more than 700 affiliates in all 50 states. Our goals are to encourage informed and active participation in government, increase an understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League never endorses candidates or political parties. Membership is open to all people age 16 and older, and we invite you to join us. Tonight's forum is being broadcast on BTV and the City of Bellingham YouTube channel. Recordings of this program will be available on the League of Women Voters of Bellingham-Whatcom County website and at the City of Bellingham YouTube channel. The forum will be rebroadcast on BTV and 102.3 KMRE Community Radio up through the election day on November 8th. No portion of this forum may be rebroadcast in part or in full without the written consent of the League of Women Voters. Questions for this forum have been prepared in advance by the League with input from the public. The Cascadia Daily News, Linden Tribune, Salish Current, The Northern Light, and 102.3 KMRE Community Radio are our media partners. Tonight, we are hosting candidates for the Washington State 42nd Legislative District Representative Position 2. The Washington State House of Representatives has 98 members. 2 are elected from each of the districts in the state. During legislative sessions, the legislature is called upon to enact or reject legislation affecting public policy in the state, to provide for the levy and collection of taxes and other revenue to support state government and assist local government, and appropriate funds for these purposes. Although laws are enacted only when legislature is convened in formal session, policy issues and the general operation of state and local government are under continuous review by legislators who serve on permanent and interim study committees. Washington State representatives serve 2-year terms and their annual salary is $57,876. I would like now to introduce and welcome the candidates in alphabetical order, Dan Johnson and Joe Timmons. So here are the rules that we're going to follow for tonight's forum. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. Then the candidates will have a 1-minute closing statement. Each candidate has a challenge card that they can use once. The challenger has 30 seconds to state their challenge. The challenged candidate then has 30 seconds to respond. I will ask candidates to speak in alphabetical order and alternate order for the remaining questions. The timer displayed on the screen will count down your time, candidates. The timer will be purple when you start, and then it will turn to yellow when there's 15 seconds remaining. When the time is up, the timer will turn red. If you continue to speak after the time limit, we may cut your microphone. So are there any questions, candidates, around the rules?
No, that sounds great, Janet. Thank you.
Okay, then if the timer's ready, we're just going to start. So question number 1. Outside of any elected service, what life experiences have prepared you to be an effective legislator? And we're going to start with you, candidate Johnson.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So what experience outside of elected has prepared me for this? That's fairly easy because I've never run to be elected into any office in the past. I will say that I was a business owner here in the Bellingham area for several years. I purchased the family business. So as a business owner in the towing industry, I was a member of our state towing and recovery association. And in that capacity, I was very often I found myself down in Olympia during the legislative sessions, working on various issues related to our industry, but then also safety related issues. In fact, I have written a bill as a citizen and working with stakeholders and lawmakers, and it was a public safety bill known as Haley's Law that was with DUI legislation. And so it made us safer. And that is how I kind of got my start into things. And again, there's other safety bills that I helped with amendments on, such as the slow down move over law and others. Those are the things that have helped me to learn about the process. I'm very familiar with the process down there. I've testified in front of several committees, and I know how it goes and how a bill becomes into law. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Timmons, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please, Janet. Thank you.
Outside of any elected service, what life experiences have prepared you to be an effective legislator? Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity to be here, Janet. It is great to be here. These forums are so important for our democratic process, I believe. Like my opponent, I also am a first-time candidate, so I do not have elected experience, but I have a wealth of experience in public service and working down in Olympia. I've spent the last decade working at the local, state, and federal levels of government, including the last nearly 8 years working directly with leaders in Olympia. I currently work in the governor's office as our Northwest Washington regional representative, where I represent the state to local communities in Whatcom County and neighboring counties. And previously, I worked at Western Washington University, where I advocated on behalf of the university and its students for 4 legislative sessions down in Olympia, helped bring resources from Olympia back to our community in that role through the capital budget to help meet growing student needs and also help stimulate our local economy, provide funding for student support services on campus, like academic advising and tutoring services, mental health counseling. So I really think that I have the professional experience to hit the ground running in this role. But outside of that, what experience do I have? I know what it's like to be a working class family right now. I grew up in a working class household. My wife works in public health. As I said, I work in the governor's office. We have a toddler that we are raising here in Whatcom County. And so that's a lens that I would really look through if given the chance to serve in this role.
Okay, thank you. So question number 2. Homelessness has increased in Washington state due to multiple factors, one of which is rising rents. What role do you think state government can play, if any, in addressing housing instability due to rising rents in Washington state? So your response, Candidate Timmons.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. This is an extremely important issue. When I talk with voters in Whatcom County, the cost of housing is on top of mind. I know that firsthand. Last year, our rent went up 35% right here in Whatcom County. We're grateful to have been able to purchase a home at the end of last year after saving for years and years, which is a difficult market to get into. We're proud to have set down roots in this community. So I understand what a lot of renters and first-time home buyers are going through right now. And I'll tell you, it's challenging. So I think our state really needs to work on this issue. I think we have a housing shortage crisis. I believe in supply and demand economics, and we have a shortage of housing. So that leads to higher cost of housing, either for rents and also for first-time home ownership. It's something that I really want to work on if given the chance to serve. I think everybody deserves to have a roof over their head. I believe everybody deserves to live in the community where they work and play. And so that's something that I really would take with me to Olympia. And let me tell you, it's not just a moral argument to me, it's an economic issue. When I talk with economic leaders like the regional port or the regional chamber of commerce, the Port of Bellingham, housing and childcare come up over and over again as impediments to our economy because there's not enough workforce housing for businesses to start here and relocate here. So I think we need to build more housing, particularly in our urban environments and around transit. And that's something that I really, really prioritize if given the chance to serve in Olympia.
Okay, thank you. So Candidate Johnson, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Homelessness has increased in Washington state due to multiple factors, one of which is rising rents. What role do you think state government can play, if any, in addressing housing instability due to rising rents in Washington?
Thank you very much for the question. So to hone in on the crux of the issue here is what you're trying to ask about is rising rent costs. And what that comes down to is the rent is based on the landlord who actually carries the mortgage and who owns the building itself. And then that is economically also based on what it costs to build the residence or purchase the residence, and what kind of permitting and fees were involved in that initial starting point of that structure. And so as people are starting to build more, the costs are going up. And a lot of that is due to an outdated Growth Management Act, which is over 30 years old, needs to be relooked at. But then there's 13 components of the GMA, and only a few are being really focused on, and the availability and affordability components of the GMA are not being focused on. The other thing is, that's an interesting statistic, is every $1,000 increase on the cost of a home prices 2,100 families out of that very home. And so with that, then looking at it from a rent standpoint, I would imagine that it's going to be more, because rent is going to be more than the mortgage, and that's how that process works. The other thing is the energy costs in the state have been skyrocketing due to certain policies coming out of Olympia, and that's stuff that we need to fix, remedy, and change.
Okay, thank you. Question number 3. Do you support the removal of dams in Washington state to improve salmon habitat? Please explain your position, and we'll start with you, candidate Johnson.
I would say that we are not in any position right now to remove any dams out of the lower Snake River. If I understand correctly, they're hydroelectric dams, and they are in fact supplying electricity. And as I'm looking down here at my notes about the dam information, little pun, is that 800,000 homes are supplied by those 4 dams down there. And in a time when we're looking at the electrification in Washington state being a top priority of some lawmakers down there, and even the governor, I think the removal of something that is going to create electricity isn't in our best interest. And in fact, what that does is that will weaken the grid, and the more draw you make on the electrical burden, so to speak, or the grid, and then you supply less electricity to it, that's going to go negative real fast. And I think it's not a good idea. In fact, the governor earlier this year also stated that it was going to be very cost prohibitive. And I don't have the number directly in front of me, but I believe it was in the billions of dollars to actually remove those dams. And so not only is it cost prohibitive, but in a time when there's such a push on electrification, why would we get rid of a source of electricity? It just doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Timmons, do you want the question repeated?
No, Janet, I think I got it. Thank you. Look, as my opponent had stated, these dams have done a tremendous job in terms of providing cheap electricity, hydroelectricity for our economy. But when they were created, I think that there weren't tribes at the table, and there weren't really sufficient thought given to salmon habitat and restoration. And so I think that, we need to look at this thing holistically through that lens. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of Lummi Nation. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Nooksack Indian tribe. I think salmon are a part of our state identity. But look, I don't think we can have a quick fix here without having other sources of energy. So I think this is a multi-pronged issue. We have a Silfab Solar, a manufacturing company right here in Bellingham and Whatcom County, that's making solar panels. I think that we need to be having our clean energy infrastructure up and running as we look at the removal of these dams, because I don't think it does anyone any good to remove hydroelectric electricity without having other forms of electricity available. So I'm very interested in looking at this thing holistically, but that also means that we really need to give really the respect and the importance needed to tribal treaty rights and the importance of fish habitat and salmon. And frankly, the dams are a hindrance to that. So I'm excited to work on this issue if given the chance.
Thank you. Question number 4. What is your position on an individual's right to access abortion? And we'll start with you, candidate Timmons.
Thanks, Janet. This, similar to housing, when I go door to door and talk with voters, this is on the top of everybody's mind. In the wake of the Roe v. Wade decision in the U.S. Supreme Court, it really is up to states to protect the right to choose. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of Planned Parenthood. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of Pro-Choice Washington. I fully support a woman's right to choose. I think access to abortion care, I think abortion is healthcare, and I think access to abortion care needs to be preserved in this state, and that the decision is a private decision between a woman, her family, and their doctor. And I don't think it's the place for government or politicians to get in the way of that. And let me say that, I believe, this issue really is paramount in this election. I think voters have a right to know where candidates stand, because every year in Olympia, there are bills that come up that restrict or ban a woman's right to choose. I'm very clear on where I stand. I will absolutely vote against those bills every time. I want to protect the right to choose in this state, and it's something that I'll do if given the chance to serve.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Johnson, your response, please. And do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I think I'm all right.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Washington voters in 1970 and 1991, through the initiative process, they spoke. And in the speaking, they legalized the abortion laws or they made abortion laws in Washington state. It's been made into code. It does exist. And as a legislator who believes in the voice of the people, then who am I to jump in there and try to thwart the citizens' initiative? And Republicans generally have a track record of respecting citizen initiatives when we look at things that have been passed by initiative, most recently as gay marriage and the legalization of marijuana in this state. And so that is something that I would also support as the citizen process. And major changes to that would be, of course, I would think it'd be up to the citizens to change it. What I can't support is the 100% no questions asked, unequivocally saying that anything is okay. So, for example, if legislation were to come up for partial birth abortion, that is not something I'm going to get on board with. I don't think that is right. I think that position is very extreme, and I think a lot of people in this state also agree with me.
Okay, thank you. So candidate Timmons, you want to do a challenge statement, please?
Yes, please. Thank you, Janet. Look, I think it's very clear that voters know where people stand on this issue because it does come before the legislature every year. Republicans introduce bills to restrict or ban a woman's right to choose in this state. I respect my opponent's position that he respects the will of the voters, but he has not stated in any forum that I've been in with him so far whether or not he would vote on a bill that would restrict or ban abortion in this state. He has not been clear in his position, and I'm clear every time.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Johnson, you have 30 seconds to respond if you choose.
Thank you very much. This is such a nuanced and visceral issue. To ask an opinion on a fictitious bill that's not being presented in front of me right now, I don't think is fair. And as a legislator, I don't think that that's responsible to say that, yeah, what if? I think that we need to look at the facts, especially relating to this issue, and look at the bills in their entirety before we make a choice and vote on those.
Okay, thank you. Question number 5. If elected, what efforts would you support to protect public safety in the face of rising crime? And we'll start with candidate Johnson.
Thank you very much. Public safety is on top of everybody's mind right now, and that is one of the top 2 issues, according to the polling statewide, is public safety and the economy. And with public safety, what we've seen in the last couple of years has been an exponential increase in crime. And that is due to 2 sessions ago, a bunch of bills that got passed as bad legislation and heavily restricted law enforcement from doing their job. And even then, previous to that, I went online and found a study from 2020 where the FBI had done their uniform crime report, and it identified the top 50 cities where property crime is soaring based on crimes per 100,000 residents. And it's unfortunate to know that Washington State in 2020 had 12 cities on that top 50 list in the nation. And we are getting worse by the day. Bellingham, by the way, was number 3 on that list. And so what would I do to help fix this problem? I would meet with stakeholders, with law enforcement, with the prosecutors, and everybody else involved in the crime enforcement all the way through the process. And I would meet with them to help make good legislation. And it's worth mentioning that I have been endorsed by the Whatcom County Sheriff Bill Ofo and Bellingham Police Chief Flo Simon.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Timmons, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please, Janet.
If elected, what efforts would you support to protect public safety in lieu of the rising crime?
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, it is. This is an issue on top of everyone's mind, myself included. I believe everybody deserves to feel safe in our community. You know, as I said earlier, I have a 2-year-old. I want him to be able to walk in downtown Bellingham and feel safe. I want him to be able to go out to East County and feel safe. I want him to feel safe in this community and want to reside here near him and my partner. Look, there have been bills passed in recent years. While I understand the intent behind them in the wake of the George Floyd killing, to restrict law enforcement use of force and pursuits, I think that, you know, this legislation needs some reform. It's something I'm committed to doing if given the chance to serve in Olympia. I know the legislature made changes to the use of force bill, House Bill 1310 last year, and that they're committed, Democrats are committed to working on the pursuits bill, and I'm committed to working on that with them if given the chance to serve. But I think we need to work with law enforcement in this process as well. I think we need to be providing the tools for law enforcement to do their job, while also, of course, holding bad actors accountable like any other profession. But I also think that, you know, it's important to recognize that rising crime rates is not just a thing in Washington State. This is nationwide as a result of the pandemic. We have behavioral health and substance use disorders on the rise since the pandemic. And I think that we need to be looking at these things holistically. And again, it's something that I'm committed to doing if given the chance to serve.
Okay, thank you. Question number 6. The Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy has rated the Washington State tax structure as the most regressive in the country. What, if any, changes would you support to the Washington tax structure if you're elected? Candidate Timmons.
Thank you, Janet. As I said, we're a working family. We have a toddler. Costs are hard right now on families. I recognize that. You know, our rent went up last year. When I go refill my tank, when I go get a gallon of milk or diapers for my kid, it is expensive and it's challenging. And I really feel for people living on the margins right now. You know, I know that the Washington State Legislature approved the capital gains tax. That is before the state Supreme Court. I anxiously await their decision as to whether or not that is constitutional. But as you said, Janet, you know, we do have, I'm proud to be a Washingtonian. I'm running for the Washington State Legislature because I think Washington State can do great things. And then if we do things well, other states will notice. But one thing that I think is a stain on our state is that we do have the most regressive tax structure in the country. I don't think that's right. You know, I think our sales tax is disproportionately high when it comes to our revenue. I would like to look at ways to try to lower the sales tax so that we can provide some relief for working class families. So I do think that this is an important issue. I think it's something that we really need to work on. And I think it's an issue around equity. You know, I think everybody deserves to pay their fair share for the services that they receive. And unfortunately, in our community right now, we do not have that.
Okay, thank you. So Candidate Johnson, do you need the question repeated?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
To say that Washington State has the most regressive tax structure in the study, I actually called my accountant to ask because I was a little perplexed being a business owner for as long as I was and knowing some of the things that I know. And what we've kind of determined is that the regressiveness of this is based on the taxes that are capped. And then they're saying, well, okay, on capped taxes, like sales tax and a gas tax, regardless of what you make, you're paying that same amount of money at the pump or when you're purchasing goods and you're spending. And what it didn't cover is the business side of things. And I can say from being a small business owner, now businesses pay exponentially a lot more taxes than the average citizen does. In fact, my business paid more in taxes at the state level than I was actually paid in a wage for working in my business. And the thing is that businesses are not experiencing a tax-friendly climate in Washington state. And as that trickles down, that does go back down to the employees, because when the cost of doing business is expensive, then that increases the cost of goods and services. And so it goes. Then you get a report that says we have a regressive tax code in this state, or a tax structure, when in actuality, it's a trickle down from the worst business climate probably in this country.
Okay, thank you. So question number 7. What, if any, steps should be taken to address the potential for gun violence in Washington state? And we'll start with candidate Johnson.
Gun safety. Thank you very much for the question. Washington state, and I think as it's been mentioned before, has some very, very strict gun policies. I think that with so many restrictions on the books, it's an enforcement issue. And then that's going to go back to public safety. With so many things that do exist as a form of law, and yet with lawlessness getting out of control, and the enforcers, meaning law enforcement, are not able to do their job adequately, effectively, I think that's the bigger issue here that we're not discussing. And one example is the decriminalization of narcotics when we go back to the Blake decision, which the Supreme Court overturned the drug possession. And they made it clear to the legislature and said, hey, look, you just need to add knowingly. But instead, the majority party in Olympia doubled down and they decriminalized. And by decriminalizing and not applying felony statutes to those engaging in drug activity, we are allowing them to obtain the legal right to possess firearms. So again, is it a matter of we need another law, or do we need better enforcement, or allow law enforcement the tools that they need to better do their job, which is enforcing the laws that are already on the books, which are, again, some of the strictest in our nation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Timmons, do you want the question repeated?
Yes, please, Janet.
What, if any, steps should be taken to address the potential for gun violence in Washington state?
Thanks, Janet. It's an important question. It absolutely is one of public safety. And I first want to start by commending the legislature for the steps that they've taken in recent years. In recent years, the legislature has banned bump stocks. They just banned high capacity magazines, and they have banned ghost guns, which were unregulated firearms that have lethal capability. So I think that the legislature in recent years has saved lives. I'm excited to see how that legislation plays out over time, and I want to commend, hopefully, my future colleagues on their efforts. That said, look, this is an issue near and dear to my heart. I was in 8th grade when Columbine happened. It had an impact on me. Mass shootings in this country is an epidemic. I think it's extremely unfortunate, and other countries don't have the level of community destruction that we do. We see it week in and week out, and it's frustrating and it's exhausting, and I think it's inexcusable. And so it's something that I hope to work on in Olympia. I fully respect the Second Amendment. I think it can be a dangerous world out there. I really recognize that. And I think people have the right to protect themselves and their families. But I don't think that military grade weapons is needed to do that. So that's something that I'm interested in working on in Olympia. And what I mean by that is weapons that can decimate a classroom or a community or a grocery store or a church in a matter of seconds before people can intervene.
Thank you. So the last question. Federal funds have recently become available for improvements to infrastructure. What are your top priorities for use of these funds in your district? And we'll start with you, candidate Timmons.
Thank you. And Janet, I'm sorry, one more time. Could you repeat, please?
Federal funds have recently become available for improvements to infrastructure. What are your top priorities for use of these funds in your district?
Thank you, Janet. I appreciate that. One of the things that I think we really need to be looking at, while I know, building new roads and building bridges, these exciting projects that have a ribbon cutting are really, just that exciting. But one thing that I think we need to be really investing in is maintenance and restoration of our infrastructure. I think it's a public safety issue. I think it's an economic issue. And that's something that I really want to see happen there. So that means, making sure that our state highways, making sure that our city roads, making sure that our connection points between communities are just that, safe and reliable for years to come. But I also think that we need to be investing in electrification. I think that we have an increasing need for electrical vehicles in our community. I've been working with Vicinity Motor Corp up in Ferndale, an electric bus company, doing amazing work right here in our community. People are buying electric cars and trucks every day. I think we need to be having an EV charging station that supports that. And then I think we need to be investing in transit as well. Public transit plays a very, very important and critical role in helping people get to the grocery store, get to work, get to school. So I would like to see these federal funds be used in a variety of ways.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson, do you want the question repeated?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Great question. What can we do with federal funds in Whatcom County, specifically the 42nd district? And what I've noticed is that in my conversations through this campaign that I've had with the North County mayors, 4 of which who have endorsed me for this position, I've noticed that the thing they're talking about is people, for reasons mentioned earlier in this program, people that have been moving out of Bellingham and into the smaller towns that make up the rest of the 42nd. They don't have the infrastructure in their areas to accommodate the people that are coming in. By that, I mean water, sewer, power, the broadband and internet. Yes, that's also not there. But getting the GMU is I'm hoping I'm using that correctly. But anyway, the expansion of the cities. The infrastructure just simply does not exist. That's going to be roads and then the public services that I mentioned earlier. And, to include the eastern part of Whatcom County, when we were just out recently in Maple Falls and Kendall, being able to help with those roads. And what a great opportunity you have in the East County when we've got the Abbotsford International Airport right there. You can come up and over 547 Sumas Kendall Highway and then create a really nice urban area there as people are moving their way up and down to Mount Baker.
Okay, thank you. So it's time now for your 1-minute closing statement. So Candidate Johnson, your closing statement, please.
Great. Thank you. And thanks again for having us here tonight for this forum. Just wanted to do a little bit of a wrap up about me. Again, I'm Dan Johnson, former United States Marine, but Marine till the day I die. I'm a business owner. I owned and operated my own company that I bought from my parents. I'm a blue collar, boots on the ground, right there with you type of a guy. And that's how I am. And that's who I am. For several years, I was a single father until I met my wife, who at the time was a single mother, and the 4 of us blended our family beautifully. And the 4 of us now exist today as the Johnsons. I do have a lot of experience in Olympia, working on legislation, testifying in front of committees, wrote a law from scratch, and amended other laws that were primarily based on public safety. I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Timmons, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Janet. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I really do think these sorts of conversations are important to help people make an informed decision on the ballot. As a bit more about myself, I grew up in a working class household here in Washington State. My dad's a pipe fitter. My folks created a small business out of our garage when I was 5 years old. That really gave me the value of hard work. And it's something that I've applied to a career in public service. I hope to be able to continue that career in this role of your state representative. I think Whatcom County deserves a state representative that's going to work hard on your behalf, someone that's going to stand up for the values that we all believe in, and to listen and work across the aisle. I have a track record of doing that. I have relationships with Republicans and Democrats across the state, and it's something that I hope to bring with me to Olympia. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I humbly ask for your vote, and you can learn more about me and my campaign at votejoetimmons.com. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank the candidates for being here tonight and for your commitment to running for public office. Voters can find more information about the candidates online at vote411.org and in your voter pamphlet. Ballots will be mailed October 19th, 2022. Your ballot must be postmarked or in a ballot drop box before 8 p.m. on November 8th. Please remember to sign your ballot envelope, and if mailing by postal service, we recommend you do that early. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.